Okay, so there has been a huge shift in U.S. policy, one of the biggest moves restricting legal immigration we've seen. We're going to break down exactly what this change is, the official reason behind it, and who it's really going to affect. Let's just start with one single number: 75. So, what is that? Well, that's the number of countries whose citizens are now, for the foreseeable future, suspended from getting immigrant visas to the United States. To put that in perspective, that's almost 40% of all the countries in the world, a truly massive policy change. So, what is this policy really? Let's get into the nuts and bolts of it.
The key word to focus on here is indefinite. That means there is no end date. It's not for a month, it's not for a year, it's just a hard stop. And while the State Department might still go through the motions, processing some paperwork, maybe doing interviews, they will not be issuing any final visas for permanent residency during this time.
All right, so what's the reason for such a massive suspension? Well, the administration's entire argument really hangs on one key legal concept that has been central to its immigration policy. And that concept is the public charge. The stated goal here is to make sure that people who immigrate to the U.S. can support themselves financially and won't end up relying on public benefits once they get here. And this quote from a State Department spokesperson really lays it out there directly. The core argument is, hey, we need to pause things to rethink our screening procedures with the very clear goal of stopping immigrants from using welfare and public benefits. So how does this actually play out, and who is really going to feel the impact? This is where understanding the difference between various types of visas is absolutely crucial. Here's the most important distinction you need to know. This suspension only hits immigrant visas. These are for people who want to live in the U.S. forever, get a green card. But non-immigrant visas, for people just staying temporarily, like tourists, students, or temporary workers, are completely untouched by this policy. And that brings us to the exemptions. So for example, if you're planning on coming for the World Cup in 2026, you'd be on a temporary tourist visa, so this suspension wouldn't affect you at all. And this is a big one. Dual nationals who have a passport from a country that's not on the list are also in the clear. Now, you have to understand, this policy didn't just happen in a vacuum. It's really the latest piece of a much larger puzzle, a series of actions that have been tightening U.S. immigration rules for the past year. I mean, just look at this timeline. You can see a clear and, frankly, accelerating pattern. It starts in early 2025 with record deportations. Then the policies just keep escalating. A massive fee hike for skilled worker visas, a historically low number of refugees being admitted, an expanded travel ban, and it all leads up to this January 2026 suspension, which is arguably the most far-reaching move of them all. So, as you can imagine, a policy this big has caused some major waves, and it's generated a lot of debate. Let's take a look at some of the criticisms and what the potential consequences could be. Critics are really questioning the whole foundation of this policy. They're turning to the data to see if this idea about immigrants using welfare holds up when compared to people born in the U.S. And what's interesting is, a 2025 study from the Cato Institute, which is a libertarian think tank, found the exact opposite of the administration's claim. When you look at it per person, immigrants actually used 21% fewer welfare and entitlement benefits than native-born Americans back in 2022. So what's the potential human cost here? Well, the scale is pretty mind-boggling. According to policy analysts like David Beer at the Cato Institute, this one action could stop around 315,000 people from legally immigrating to the U.S. in just a single year. These are people who would have otherwise been eligible. And beyond the very real human impact, economists are also pointing to a potential hit to the entire U.S. economy, which, as you know, depends on steady growth. The Brookings Institution ran the numbers, and their model estimated that this lower level of immigration could actually slow down U.S. GDP growth by 0.2 percentage points. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for an economy as massive as the United States, that represents a pretty significant headwind. And the ripple effects, they just keep going. Experts are worried about a chilling effect, where families who are legally entitled to benefits might be too scared to use them now. They're also pointing out the risk of separating families, of turning away skilled workers our economy needs, and even sparking some diplomatic backlash from all those countries affected. So all of this leaves us with a really fundamental question. As these pathways to legal immigration get shut down for almost half the world, What does this indefinitely mean for the future of the American workforce, its economy, and maybe even its identity as a nation of immigrants?